Watch out, that's not beer.
Please.
Oh! Oh my god! Oh, here, it's disgusting.
Told you.
Will we ever get our water guns back?
Gotcha.
Spirit nods yes.
Okay, something creepy.
Move in, move in! You should go. I'll be fine. And you'll be fine. And we'll see each other again.
Stepping into The Last of Us Left Behind was a bittersweet experience. Going in, you know two things for sure. Riley will die, and this will be the last time that you play new Last of Us content for quite some time. Leading up to the DLC, quite honestly, I wasn't that excited. I think subconsciously I felt that the DLC would inevitably fall short of the main game, and I was okay with that given how much The Last of Us meant to me. But then I played Left Behind, and I was completely shocked by the experience that Naughty Dog delivered. Like my review of The Last of Us, I'll try to skip over the obvious stuff and just get to the core of the experience. If you haven't played Left Behind or The Last of Us, stop watching because I'll be spoiling pretty much everything.
Well, how many people get to die of natural causes in this world?
None that I know of.
Exactly.
Now, unlike the main story in The Last of Us, Left Behind doesn't focus on a father-daughter type relationship, but instead the friendship between two young girls and how that friendship would manifest and develop in a post-apocalyptic setting. The relationship between Joel and Ellie was built up in gameplay in two specific ways usually. Through combat scenarios,
Oh shit! Don't kill me!
and through optional conversations that you could find.
I stayed at a place like this, back in the Boston QZ.
Military preparatory school.
Yeah, nice way of saying orphanage.
Outside of the major plot points portrayed in cutscenes, those were the moments that helped you develop a bond with the characters. Now, while Left Behind has combat, it's used to passively reinforce your already established relationship with Joel as opposed to building the one between Ellie and Riley.
Shit! What the hell?
Relax.
What the hell are we doing here? Who gives a fuck about that old man and a little girl?
The sooner we find them, the sooner we get out of here.
Instead, to build up that friendship, Naughty Dog reimagines the combat mechanics in a way that fleshes out and exposes their youthful innocence, contrasted against the hopeless and bitter world surrounding them. I never would have imagined that third-person shooting and brick-throwing mechanics could be so adorable, funny, and heartfelt.
Oh, what? In your face!
Going into the DLC, I had it in my mind that I could never really care about Riley or her relationship to Ellie because I knew how it would end. But by the time we were water gun fighting, I suddenly realized that the connection between Ellie and Riley had developed so subtly and believably that I had been smirking and smiling with them for hours without even realizing it.
I'm reading a book on anti-gravity, and it's impossible to put down.
Nice.
Yes, that one's awesome.
This is Left Behind's greatest strength, finding the essence of a scene or a moment, and adding artistic elements such as perfectly encapsulating music, natural sounding dialogue with absurdly convincing performances that feel as though they were improvised or nailed on the first take, and combining every element together into a fully realized portrayal of human interaction. Every scene between Ellie and Riley feels self-actualized, so carefully thought out and brilliantly executed that it reaches its fullest potential of emotional impact. The greatest thing is how low-key many of these scenes are. It's not repeated near-death experiences that make you care about the characters. It's pulling out a joke book and reading dozens of jokes out loud, not because you have to, you can stop at any time, but because it's so damn fun hearing Ellie and Riley enjoy themselves. This builds beautifully off the established main story of The Last of Us. Even though that takes place after Left Behind, we know what kinds of trials and tribulations Ellie will face, and of course, we know what Riley's fate is. This makes these light-hearted interactions that much more powerful and creates even more desire in us to see them through to their fullest. I was shocked at how many jokes you could read from the joke book, and I was even more surprised by the number of times you could shake Skeleseer.
Well, Skeleseer can suck my dick.
Nice, Ellie.
Thanks. You're welcome.
But I didn't keep going for the sake of seeing how many times the game would let me. I wanted to give Ellie and Riley as much levity as I could before their lives would inevitably be changed forever by far darker events. As odd as it may sound that I wanted the characters to have fun, it's the truth, and that's how effectively the team at Naughty Dog suspends your disbelief and engages you in the story and characters. Something new that the DLC tries is giving players a choice in what Ellie says and does in conversations. While we had the option of finding conversations or interactions in the main game, we never got to participate in them. Now, if I'm being honest, I don't know how much I really liked this aspect of the DLC. It felt sort of inconsistent with the rest of the experience, and I never really felt like it added anything. If anything, it felt like something was kind of being taken away since you can only choose one option. I didn't want to just hear one conversational path. Like Skeleseer or the joke book, I wanted to hear them all explored, and I didn't want to have to play through the game 4 times in order to hear them all. It makes sense in the context of the moment, I suppose, that you can only choose one, but ultimately I was more confused and a little annoyed with these encounters than I was intrigued. Thankfully, these are kept to a minimum throughout the DLC, only appearing maybe 2 or 3 times as far as I can remember. Of course, even more so than being about Ellie and Riley's relationship, the DLC is actually just about Ellie. I've neglected the part of the DLC thus far that takes place in what would be the transition between fall and winter of the main story. This portion of the DLC was a huge surprise to me, and I'm sure for almost everyone, seeing as Naughty Dog kept it a secret. Just having the Ellie and Riley timeline on its own might have felt kind of out of place. Relevant, but perhaps not neatly tied into anything. The fact that this part takes place in a mall, perfectly creating a trip down memory lane for Ellie, and simultaneously bridging the mysterious gap between fall and winter to put some of our questions to rest, makes the DLC as a whole far more impactful and naturally integrated. By the time we reach the end of the DLC and the parallel between Riley's last words and Ellie's actions is realized, there's a sense of motivational full circle being drawn. We more fully understand Ellie's motives in rescuing and caring for Joel, and feel the weight and psychological scarring that her encounter with David will soon leave her with. The big moment everyone likes to talk about from the DLC is when Ellie pecks Riley on the lips. Now, many took this as a sure sign that Ellie is gay, and much like the ending of The Last of Us, ultimately it's kind of up to interpretation. My interpretation isn't that Ellie is gay. Now, let's keep in mind that The Last of Us has never been a game about black and white values. Notice how Joel's actions at the end of the main story can't be defined as right or wrong, but rather both or somewhere in between. This is similar in the sense that love isn't black and white for Ellie, especially not after the fall of mankind. There's not a whole lot of trustworthy or friendly people left, and established gender roles have surely faded away along with functioning society. I think that Riley is the only person that Ellie can really care for or trust at this point in her life. This is probably the closest thing to love that she's ever felt. And with the whole not knowing if she'll make it from one day to the next thing, I'm not really surprised by what happened. And quite frankly, I don't care if she's straight, gay, bi, or if she was just confused in that moment. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it breaks down the invisible presumptions and rules we have about love and relationships, and uses the extremity of the fall of man to expose how ultimately pointless these presumptions are. The bottom line for me is that, looking back at Left Behind, Ellie being gay, as some put it, or kissing Riley, isn't even close to being one of the first things that I think of. It immediately made sense to me, and the part I cared about wasn't that Ellie kissed a girl, but that Ellie and Riley's relationship was more than just friends. This is what makes Riley's death even more powerful than we thought it to be. It's pretty ingenious how every aspect of the DLC reinforces the original story. The way it fills in the gaps between fall and winter where arguably too much was left up to the imagination initially. How Ellie's relationship and loss of the person closest to her informs how she feels about Joel. And how it exposes the many dimensions of Ellie that we got glimpses of in the main story even more, only further solidifying her as not just my favorite video game character, but my favorite fictional character of all time. Naughty Dog hasn't just created an experimental masterpiece that builds phenomenally off every aspect of the original game, but they've raised the bar and set the standard for what DLC should be. Too many studios create DLC just to keep players interested in their game or to earn more money. While undoubtedly these are factors in any studio production, seeing as they need to be profitable, Left Behind is almost revolutionary in the way it uses additional content to enrich past and future Last of Us experiences. It's not just an additional experience, it's supplemental, and one that's almost fundamental to the characters and story and is worth playing even for those who found themselves disappointed by the main game. Left Behind offers something different that any video game enthusiast should be able to appreciate. I can't say I cried during Left Behind, I can't say it's changed my life like I felt the main story did, but I can say that it made me laugh out loud numerous times, increased my appreciation of the story and the characters, and surprised me on numerous levels thanks to all the brilliant repurposing of existing gameplay mechanics. Left Behind delivered exactly what all DLC should, expanding the existing story, giving insight into subplots, and enriching the overall experience in doing so. The Last of Us is a better game thanks to Left Behind, and I don't think I could have asked for anything more from Naughty Dog.